Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I'm Tom Comparin, he, him pronouns, and I will be your worship associate this morning. It's a joy to see you all here today. It's a joy to be in community with you. For in dark times, such as we are now facing, the joy we can find in community is especially important. So, wherever you are in your journey for finding truth and meaning, whether you arrive joyous or with a heavy heart or a bit of both, we are so very grateful that you have chosen to be here this morning. If you're visiting us for the first time, we offer you an especially warm welcome. Welcome to this dome, to this gathering, to this sanctuary of truth and compassion. We hope that you will stay after the service for a time of conversation and connection. Conversations can happen on Zoom or right here in the hall.
It's good to see all of you today. My name is LB. Any pronouns work for me, and I'm happy to be sharing the worship roles with Tom today.
I prayed this past week. Spirit of life, help me keep my attention on the resistance. That is how my prayer started. Spirit of life, help me keep my attention on the resistance. I was prompted to pray by Wellspring, the UU course in spiritual deepening. I'm co-facilitating the class this year. Last week's theme was prayer. I am not a person who prays, was not a person who prays, but praying was part of our homework. So I said a prayer out loud, only a whisper, with no idea what I would say or to whom. Spirit of life. It was early in the morning, but I had already glanced at the news. No wonder the idea of resistance would surface so quickly in my thoughts, in my prayer. The torrent of cruelty and corruption and lies gushing out of Washington, the pathetic enablers sheepishly avoiding the eyes of the world, hands stuffed deep in their pockets, too cowed to utter any rebuke. Spirit of life, let me not forget even for a moment those being threatened, those being harmed. I have lately joined resistance groups, made phone calls, contributed money, and I know that bigger efforts are in the works. But still, each morning, I want to shout, I want to scream, I want to cry. Why aren't there multitudes spilling into the streets? I feel a pull, a nagging, urgent tugging. Have you felt it? The need to get up right now, and I don't even know. Go to Washington, go chain ourselves to the White House fence, do something, anything. Spirit of life, channel my rage towards righteous, effective action. Back in 2018, in that earlier period of darkness, I answered the call of the Poor People's Campaign, as did others in this congregation. I joined multiple protests at the Capitol in Albany. Before the protests, they held nonviolent protest training sessions. That was new to me, the careful planning and preparedness. They taught us about the various roles to be filled, people to lead the march, people assigned to de-escalate tense situations, people to lead songs and chants, lawyers to remind the authorities of our rights, and a role they called moral witness. Those protesters who would physically block doorways, who would commit the acts of civil disobedience, who would be arrested. Many roles, all essential. No one can do them all. No one was asked to do them all. Spirit of life, keep me strong. The trainers told us that the police at the Capitol are accustomed to handling protesters, and their conduct, even during arrests, is generally respectful. Experienced activists there at the training shared stories of their experiences at other venues where treatment was not so respectful, and that the dangers were often magnified for people of color, for protesters belonging to marginalized groups. Spirit of life, grant me the courage that I may spend my privilege to protect others. Spirit of life, keep me sane that I might better resist. Spirit of life, keep me hopeful that I might not fall into despair. My prayer was not an appeal for divine intervention, but reciting it, using that phrase, Spirit of life, reminded me of my UU values. Speaking the words aloud imbued my resistance checklist with a sense of spirituality. And that makes me feel a little bit stronger, a little bit more attentive, a little bit more hopeful. I now repeat my resistance prayer each morning.
So this week was a particularly challenging week for me personally. As some of you may know, professionally, I run a diversity, equity, and inclusion consulting firm. I was the third employee of the company back in 2019, and my colleague and I, over the last 5 years, 6 years, have built a 10-person team of DEI, dynamic DEI practitioners, helping all sorts of organizations become more fair and inclusive workplaces. It's hard and emotionally exhausting work, but it's satisfying when you see real change taking place. And as all of us know, DEI work has been under attack since day one of the new administration, particularly with Executive Order 14151. This specific EO charges the federal government to, quote unquote, coordinate the termination of all discriminatory programs, including illegal DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility DEIA mandates, policies, programs, preferences, and activities. Since January 20th, hundreds of my fellow DEI practitioners have been laid off. Some of them are actually being doxxed or targeted online and in person by right-wing vigilantes. And the profession and sector as a whole is being not only misrepresented, but attacked by the most powerful people in the country. And despite many people verbalizing support for the work online and in person, the impact of this EO, and frankly, all the threats against DEI since the before and after the election, impacted our business so significantly that we had to give notice of layoffs to over half our team this past week. While we did so with kindness and generosity at the center of our decision, the decision was still heartbreaking, and telling our tight-knit team was pretty excruciating. The knowledge of sending talented change agents into the world looking for jobs while the profession is under attack is both scary and heart-wrenching. Despite this, I've seen remarkable resilience in my team and also in clients. Clients are already defying the intentions of the EO. And I say intentions very purposefully here, because the EO itself does not make anything illegal with its vague language and broad restrictions. In fact, a federal court in Baltimore just this past Friday night halted the anti-DEIA executive order. This EO and many like it are intending to scare people off into stopping the work that we know has been so effective. One of the reasons I know the work has been effective and that DEI work is working is because of the size and scale of the pushback from those in powerful positions. Change has always been a push and pull. There's a quote from Dr. Ibram Kendi from the 2017 book, Stamped from the Beginning. You're probably familiar with this How to Be an Anti-Racist. And forgive me if I've brought this quote before, but I should probably get it tattooed on me at this point because I think it's one of the most profound and accessible and applicable quotes. I use it all the time. So he says, As I carefully studied America's racial past, I did not see a singular historical force arriving at a post-racial America. I did not see a singular force becoming more covert and implicit over time. I did not see a singular historical force taking steps forward and backwards on race. I saw two distinct historical forces. I saw a dual and dueling history of racial progress and the simultaneous progression of racism. I saw the anti-racist force of equality and the racist force of inequality marching forward, progressing in rhetoric, in tactics, in policies. He posits that there's not this long moral arc towards justice. He posits that these historical forces are always dual and dueling. And I like that because it makes me less passive. I can't sit on this long arc expecting justice because it's not going to come in passivity. We have to be active in rhetoric, tactics, and in policies. And as we can see, while his book is focused on race and racism, it's applicable to all the other forms of inequality and injustices that impact so many of us. But I know we have been making progress. The anti-progress forces are at the very top. That means that we have strength and power because those that have the most power are pushing back very hard. The intention from this administration is to scare leaders and everyday people to divest from DEI work before it's even illegal. And even if and when it becomes illegal, some are still hesitating, but this hesitation led to the company having to let folks go. The work has slowed significantly, but it has not stopped. And so many people are doubling down, knowing the risks. They are not complying with the scare tactics. They are not going to comply. They are ready to face the risks and navigate an unknown terrain in the very blatant force of authoritarianism. And this is required of all of us. And what that means, though, is that we must be shaken from our comfortable place. Calling our elected officials is crucial, but it will not be enough. I have a friend from graduate school. He's currently the director of ministry and continuing education programs at Lexington Theological Seminary. His name is Dr. Wilson Dickinson, and he recently wrote, I wonder if one of the best longer-term actions that professional class people could do right now is reckon with our powerlessness, especially as individuals. We cannot manage our way out of this. The old playbook, largely focused on individual actions within structures as they are, is not going to work. We need collective power, communities, and movements. But our training to excellently and intelligently serve dominant systems and to busy ourselves with our individual tasks is an obstacle to that kind of collective and transformative work. So perhaps one present task is to feel the powerlessness, to find out what it means to grieve, and out of this vulnerability to begin to reach out to others for this long work of survival and hope and systemic change. I know many of us are experiencing the vulnerability of powerlessness, and that is real. We must face that kind of grief, but not get stuck there. I know many of us, including myself, come to UUSS for the possibility of collective and transformative work. This will be what gets us through this next chapter of the United States. But it won't be easy, and it will require disobedience in so many forms, whether it is at work or larger than that. Project Moonshot recently shared data from a 2024 study that showed that only 7% of backsliding democracies survive without a counter movement, but 51% survive if there is one. They say our tools are draw red lines, non-cooperate, solidarity and fraternization. It's a hard one. They say take up space. And the last one, avoid preemptive support. Do not comply up front. Avoid preemptive support. Do not comply. Now, that's going to be different for all of us because the risks are different for all of us. Each of us find our ways of civil disobedience, whether it's in the streets, at work, or at home. There is a place, like Tom said, for all of us in this movement, and we need each and every one of us. The movement is now. At a recent worship team meeting after the election, we were discussing what binds us as UUSS. And despite the different belief systems we come from and where we might be now, what I think binds us is the belief in a better world. And that better world requires both resistance and simultaneously the ability to dream and create something, a new world, not trying to get back to where we were. We have to dream of what will be. So next, I want to share this video with you, one that I go back to really often, and I'm sure some of you have seen it. This is a sermon by Valerie Kaur. Valerie is a civil rights activist, leader, lawyer, award-winning filmmaker, educator, author, and speaker. And this particular video is from the National Moral Revival Poor People's Campaign, Watch Night Service, back in 2017, right around the time Tom was participating in that training. And I think it's still just as resonant as it was 8 years ago. Okay. So, in the spirit of Valerie's charge and our UUS tradition of resistance, I offer you an idea to create a to-do list for resistance on a weekly basis. Create a practice, a habit of resistance, and then simultaneously create a habit of identifying the ways you are contributing to the birth of our new world. What if the typical sources of funding go away? How might we imagine a new one? If the ways we have kept us safe no longer are safe, how might we imagine new ways of keeping us safe? If the structures we have relied on to provide stability are no longer stable, how might we create stability anew? A new way to dream into being the fairer, kinder, gentler, more inclusive and loving world we all know is possible. Keep both lists close and present, resistance and creation. Share your lists with others to build that sacred community and collective transformation Dr. Dickinson suggested. And it might take 4 years and it might take 40, but I believe, and Valerie believes, and I think you all believe that this new world can be born and will be born. And each thing we do now will be part of that labor that pushes this world into existence.